Real big, Mark. We're live.
We are here.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
We are Mark. I just pointed at myself and said Mark, but I'm not Mark.
I am Mark.
I'm Smithers. So if you don't know us, we're the Chumpcast. Normally there's a third one of us, but he's in the mountain somewhere. He's probably been eaten by a cougar at this point.
Most likely.
Whether it be a literal cougar or a woman who is unhappy with her marriage.
Slow runner too. There's no way he'd be able to escape a cougar.
You know what? He's gonna be so pissed when he hears you say that.
Probably faster.
His
than
biggest pet peeve is watching somebody run in a movie and they run poorly. That's why he's such a huge Tom Cruise fan.
Greatest on-screen runners of all time.
He runs like a Muppet. But anyways, we are the Chumpcast. We do this weekly show, sometimes outside, as you can see behind me. This is literally the street that I live on. I hope you can't see the crossroads and actually find where I live, but not that anybody would. I want to preface this by saying, if you're new to this show, we don't take ourselves seriously, and you shouldn't take us seriously either. Is that fair? We watch a lot of movies,
especially Fast and Furious movies.
I don't think that there's ever been a bad Fast and Furious movie. So take that for what it's worth. I think that they're the pinnacle of filmmaking, and that's why we're here, right? Because of our opinions.
Especially on Fast and Furious, yes.
Yeah. I currently am planning like a tabletop RPG that is based on Fast and Furious, which I think lends itself so well to the universe of just like Dom Toretto, played by Vin Diesel, is so clearly a barbarian. Just like, you know, Tyrese is obviously a bard. It's so obvious. I can't believe nobody's done this before.
Yeah, so for the new listeners, obviously we have Smithers here talking about D&D. We don't just talk movies. The one thing we do each episode, though, is go see the latest movie and then give our review at the end. But we cover everything from comic books to D&D to TV shows, anything nerd-related, gaming, whatever it is, we like to talk about it here on the Chumpcast. I also want to give a quick thanks to Joe from Guy at the Movies for including us at the first ever, I think, Guy at the Movie Film Festival is what we're calling it. So thank you for having us on here. We just a little over an hour ago took part in a comics to movies roundtable with some awesome people. E-Man from E-Man's Movie Reviews was there, as well as Daryl from Watch Alike.
E-Man is the man. Daryl, I could take or leave.
You and Daryl need to hash it out in just all-out battle.
We're gonna hash it out. Let me just say, we're gonna hash it out. Just kidding, Daryl. I love you. But yeah, and we had a really good time doing that. We basically talked about the state of the movie industry and where it stands right now as far as comic books go. Argued about whether or not we're oversaturated and what sucks and what doesn't, which I think is just a great conversation. I could probably do it for like 6 hours at a time. I try not to, but you know, here we are. I had so many other notes written down, just like of shit that I wanted to talk about during that, and I don't know, man.
We didn't get to it. I mean, Joe has put on a great movie festival so far. These panels have been about an hour or so, but we love talking comic books, especially adaptations in movies. And the guys that we were with, E-Man and Daryl, they're great guests to have and really dive into that sort of thing. So I would fully recommend going back and watching our conversation that we had with them. But yeah, to your point, Smithers, we can go on for hours and hours.
I thought you were going to say, especially because we've been drinking.
That too.
So if you're new to this, I'm the alcoholic of the podcast. Mark is the consummate narcissist, I think is probably the right way to call that.
Paraphrasing.
Yeah, sure. So we went to the theaters this week for the very first time in about 6 months. We decided, I think, that Sonic was the last thing that we saw in theaters. Is that right?
I was surprised you texted me, like, are we going to go see this in theaters? Because I feel like you were a little more hesitant than I was. I mean, I'm going back to the gym and being smart wearing a mask, you know, but even just going back to the gym, I think that you're more at risk doing those sorts of things than you are going to the theater. And I think after we went to the theater, your eyes were a little bit open to like, all right, if this many people are actually going to these movies, we might not have a problem, but that also may have been a New Mutants problem.
Yeah. A movie that's been on literally on the back burner for about 3 years.
I think Tenet is the movie that is going to be the prime example of how many people are going to actually come out to the movies in the next month or so.
So it released internationally already, and it's making money, which doesn't really say anything because there are countries in the world that are doing way better at this than we are. We don't deserve movie theaters to be opening, but that has not stopped anybody in America, so here we are. I think what I'm going to do for Tenet is go see it. I'm going to take Friday off. So next weekend is Labor Day weekend. I'm going to take Friday off, get a 4-day weekend. Hopefully go see this Friday during the day when nobody would be there. I don't know what you think, but had we gone to a movie theater that was actually crowded, I would have felt really uncomfortable.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you haven't looked at the news with AMC especially, I don't know what movie theaters the listener, but AMC is the big one here out in the
AMC is the biggest theater chain in the world.
Been around for 100 years, right?
I don't know about that. That sounds ridiculous.
It had a whole new intro thing for New Mutants, like about the theater.
Dude, you know what?
It does sound made up.
The other thing is, I know that I'm going off on a tangent here, this fucking diatribe that I do almost weekly. You don't need to advertise IMAX to me when I'm sitting in an IMAX theater. I know what IMAX is. You don't need to fucking sell me on this. Just let me watch the goddamn movie. Sorry, go ahead. Well, I don't even remember what you were saying.
But it's kind of cool, the visuals you get and everything, where you're just like going through that like weird mountainous rainforest,
and then intro,
and then
for 4 years.
No, the intro for 4 years was that couple that were drinking the same Coke.
That was Regal. That was when we used to go to Regal theaters. AMC has been the same for 4 years.
Regardless, what was I saying?
I don't know.
The theater was not bad for New Mutants. There were not many people. What I was saying is AMC is doing this thing where they're only allowing 30% capacity in these theaters.
I think it's 40, but yeah.
I think it's 30.
Fuck you, it's 40.
But anyways, and they've teamed up with Clorox. I don't know what the fuck that means.
That doesn't mean it means literally nothing.
They're a partner with Clorox. They're putting in these like high intensity air filters, or
again, means nothing.
So we will see. We'll see. I mean, we will see. If there's a COVID case, it's going to hit the news if it was due to going to a movie theater. So
how would you feel if you got out of a movie and like 2 days later you found out like, oh, this employee tested positive at this Regal theater, or I'm sorry, AMC theater in the town that we're in? Yeah. Would you be like, oh shit, I probably have it now, or would you just be like, oh well?
I don't know, but you got to think of all the places you've like entered or walked by that have possibly had a person there in the in like the area that tested positive for COVID.
Almost certainly, yeah.
At one point,
yeah.
If you've gone to a grocery store, the probability of somebody having COVID, especially like a worker, is, I mean, got to think there's definitely those people.
It's probably like 75% plus.
Yeah. So I don't know. Whatever. I'm not saying I wouldn't be like, damn, but at the same time,
we both went into the bathroom before the movie, and I was like, do I wash my hands, or do I like, is touching things in here worse than washing my hands?
Bring a little hand sanitizer.
Yeah, the hand sanitizer was clutch. Good call on that. But I did like that there was nobody sitting within 10 seats of me in any direction, which is exactly how it should be at a theater at all times. I hearken back to my experience going to see, you came with me to see A Quiet Place, right?
Yeah.
The person sitting behind us ruined the movie for me. Wouldn't shut up the entire time. Always had candy, crinkle in the bag and shit. Like,
at a jumbo
I wish
bag
I could
of,
see
of Sun Chips.
Yeah, I wish I could see every movie specifically with like 10 people in the theater, and that's it.
But that's the world we live in now. But you won't have that in the next year.
Well, okay, so
Get over it.
I was telling you about this before we hopped on, and Gizmodo posted this article basically talking about what they're calling the worst new tech of 2020, which may be a little bit early. You know, we're only in August. I guess technically September is like 2 days from now. But this company called Xenex. Yeah, that's right. So
sounds like an underground German fucking. Like,
it sounds like a club
dubstep, deep house music festival.
That's probably
Xenex.
Yeah. So they programmed this device called the Venue, which is and quoting directly this Gizmodo article, A device that would have viewers pay to access content by scanning the number of people watching and then charging them a ticketed entertainment, quote unquote, fee. So,
Venue sounds like a new Dave Franco movie.
yeah, it kind of does. And if you watch The Rental, it's you know that this movie's gonna suck too. The Rental's the worst movie of this year.
No.
What was worse? Think about it and get back to me. I'm going to keep talking about this
for a
device.
second. It might have been. I don't know.
So what they're talking about is a device that you place in your home that is supposed to gauge the number of people in your vicinity who can see your television. Okay. So in theory, you could use this as a ticketing system that would say $5 per person, whatever, to watch this movie. So it would circumvent the problem. I'm using a lot of air quotes this episode because I've had a few beers. I recently switched from coffee to beer, so I'm just going to keep doing this. Well, imagine you're going to watch Mulan on Disney Plus, okay? And instead of charging you a $30 flat fee, it scanned the room that you're sitting in and said, instead of $30, I'm going to charge $5 per person. So
okay.
If you're a very lonely person, like Mark, I assume that you are, you have no friends, your wife hates you,
yeah,
your kid hates you, doesn't want to be anywhere
doesn't
near
even
you.
want to be by me, and he's not even mobile.
Yeah, he's still like
he's somehow move away from me though.
He's learning to crawl in order to get away from you. So in theory, this would say there's only one person in this room, so we're only going to charge you for a single ticket, and $5, $6, $10, whatever it's going to be. This is really part of the dystopian future, right?
I just need a better understanding. Here's my thought is, okay, are we talking like, let's take Mulan, for example. What are they charging $30 on Disney Plus right now? Pretty fucking ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Are they saying like that price is not going to change until you get more people, and then we will start discounting it based on how many people you have there?
I would think that they'd be like, it's $10 a head.
Okay.
And maybe it maxes out. Like,
do you think they're going to adjust the overall price? So if it's $30 and you have 5 people there, are they gonna discount the price and then split it up amongst those 5 people, or are they just gonna take the 30 divided by 5?
Presumably, they wouldn't say if you're a single person, it's still gonna be $30, right? So that's what I'm thinking. This is the only good use out of this product. Otherwise, it's just a gross invasion of privacy. Like I can't fathom the other use for this other than just, hey, we're going to pay attention even more so than we already do to what you're doing at all times. So
I'm thinking of just the creative ways, there's going to be people trying to fucking do a workaround.
Well, let's keep
like cardboard cutouts or fucking blow up dolls.
According to the article that I read about this, if you say like 4 people are going to watch this movie and a 5th person walks into the room, then the movie automatically pauses. So tell me this is not some like Blade Runner bullshit where they're literally just living in your house telling you, no, you can't watch this. You have to watch once this person leaves.
You know what Dave Franco's going to do is he's going to actually make a movie called The Venue, but it's going to be a horror movie where there are 4 people in the room and they're like watching a spooky movie, and then it's going to make a 5th and then everyone starts freaking out.
Obviously, yeah. That's the most obvious fucking plot twist ever. So yeah, that makes sense.
Franco.
I don't know what to say about this. I think we're really getting out over our skis on this, right? As far as technology that is necessary to watch movies.
We ever not get way over our skis on any fucking topic there is.
I guess I also need to apologize. I know that there are sirens in the background. We live in Chicago.
Outside.
We get we're not on the south side, we're on the north side. We get 5 nice days out of the year where it's not blistering hot or frigid and snowing. So we had to take advantage of this, and we appreciate Joe, guy at the movies, letting us do this. Not that I asked or anything, but he was kind enough to go along with it, with this. All right. I guess we'll play a drop now.
Play a drop.
News to us.
So that is the news to us drop, which means that we're going to talk about some news. We had a trailer this week, which is basically a follow-up to what we had last week in Enola Holmes. This is, upon first viewing, I took away a few things. One being that Millie Bobby Brown is actually a producer of this movie, which I think is insane. She's what, like 15? What were you doing at 15 besides jerking off in your bedroom, never leaving? Playing video games.
BK Chicken Fries just came out, and I was like at BK every other day riding my skateboard.
I actually remember when BK Chicken Fries came out.
I don't know. I feel like they were around when I was 15. Though.
It could very well be right around. I mean that, like I'm looking back in time. That kind of makes sense. So
I'm dead on. With that.
I hope that you are. That's
a guy walking with a brief.
Hey, okay. We are actually. Stop it. Talk later. There you heard from Steve and my dog. Anyways, Enola Holmes. Millie Bobby Brown
Steve almost joined the podcast.
I could grab him a mic. So Millie Bobby Brown is the shit. She's looking for her mom in this trailer. She is the younger sister of Sherlock Holmes. And there's another Holmes in this that I'm not familiar with. I didn't remember.
Henry Cavill, though.
No, the other one. The other one with the really weird curly mustache. Anyways, doesn't matter. She's looking for her mom, played by Helena Bonham Carter. So this is not... Shit, who's the director who always uses Helena Bonham Carter? God.
Podcast, right?
Yeah, we are definitely a movie podcast. We know everything about everything. Tim Burton. His wife, Tim Burton. It's not a Tim Burton movie. But Helena Bonham Carter is in this. Henry Cavill is in this a lot more than I thought he would be, which is a plus. I will always take more Henry Cavill when I could possibly get it. So he's very charming as a...
Get it. We get it. Oh, I thought you were going to say as an overall man.
That too. Mark, what did you think when you watched this trailer?
I liked it. I do give a lot more respect to Millie Bobby Brown for directing that. Mentioned when I was that age, producing. When I was that age, I was doing absolutely nothing with my life. Chicken fries. So I don't know. I liked it.
Welcome to this commercial for Burger King.
Yeah. It's not going to have anything to do with movies that I actually enjoyed back in the day, were the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes.
Those aren't that old. Like they were. I'm pretty sure both of them came within the last 10 years.
Okay, that's still a while ago, but I do enjoy the lore of Sherlock Holmes, so I'm for it.
Okay, but do you think that you would enjoy it as much without Robert Downey Jr. being super charming and shit?
We have Henry Cavill now, so.
But he's not the main character.
But you just said he's in this more than he thought he would, so I'm all for that.
Okay.
Yeah, we know there's popping going on. That's just my toe. I just can't stop cracking it. And there's a little tiny mic right by my toe as well.
Okay, let's move on, shall we, please?
No, yes, Fluffy Fox. Unfortunately, we were not able to identify the cause of the popping, so we apologize.
I don't apologize.
It's your mic.
I don't apologize, dude. No, Mark. It's definitely Mark. Let's keep talking though. This is coming next month. I wonder if Netflix is going to start kind of ramping down the new movie releases that they have, just because theaters are starting to reopen. I mean, obviously, at some point, we're going to get hit with a second wave of this, and everything's going to get shut down again. Do you think that they're going to start holding stuff back, or is it just going to be, no, fuck it, let's push forward?
I think they'll just push forward with it.
That's probably bad, right?
I don't know. Got to make some money. You know,
who does? Netflix is making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
Netflix is not the problem. AMC maybe, but I don't know. They're already filing for bankruptcy. They're issuing junk bonds and stuff. Like, I think they're pretty much screwed out of this no matter what. Like, New Mutants was probably the marquee release this week, and it made about $8 million domestically. That is not good. This movie had like $100 million budget. Granted, it's been in purgatory for years.
And I heard they actually didn't go through with the reshoots. I don't know if that meant like they reshot a few things and were just like, nah, screw it.
They didn't. So the rumor for the longest time was they're reshooting everything. They did not reshoot anything, which makes sense because if you think about it, most of these actors are pretty young. I mean, 3 years later, they would all look completely different. Like Maisie Williams had short hair and stuff, and I know you can do wigs and all that, but that's not probably not gonna cut it. Anyways, let's talk some other news. Project X Entertainment, the company that is responsible for bringing you Scream 5 and other movies as such, has acquired the rights to the Nutty Professor franchise. So if you're not familiar, first of all, go watch these movies. They're hilarious. Secondly, Eddie Murphy basically plays everybody in these movies. Did two of the Nutty Professors and then the Clumps. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
How the fuck do you try and reboot these movies? They will never be better than Eddie Murray sitting in a fat suit.
Not
Eddie Murray. Yeah. Sorry, Eddie Murphy. I've had a few beers.
Murray.
Sitting around a kitchen table and just farting at one another. Like, you cannot top that. Like, this is the peak of cinema. Why are you even trying?
Your joke, Murray.
Murray.
So he's not going to be affiliated with these movies at all.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, he's basically been off the radar for a really long time.
You got to think, if he's not going to do a stand-up special, he's not going to do a reboot of fucking...
Based on everything that I've heard, he's actually starting to get back into stand-up comedy, which is great.
I think he's going to.
His brand of stand-up probably doesn't lend itself to the 2020 landscape.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that he can't adjust. I mean, he could still do like a Chappelle type thing where he's kind of lampooning, woke culture and whatnot. But I can't see this possibly working.
No.
All the jokes in this movie were just fat jokes. Like, there was nothing else.
The biggest joke was him just getting bigger, which is the giant, fat, nutty professor.
Yeah.
Going through the city and just knocking down buildings.
That was his like internal nightmare. But the scene where Dave Chappelle is the stand-up and he's wearing the weird hat and takes it off and he's got terrible braids and shit, I think that's an all-time movie scene. I think it's absolutely hilarious. And if you can get the same people who were in charge of writing for the first one, the first few, I guess. No, probably not. But like, what's the direction with this? Yeah, I think that when you do reboots, generally you see something like
opportunity.
Well,
and
what you see is somebody like trying to make the movie more diverse or something like that, and that's not really the case here. I guess they could make it a woman, maybe, where she's the professor, but I don't know. In my opinion, you don't mess with perfection.
This is very much in like the Bill and Ted type genre. The way I think about it, like if you don't have that main character, if you do not have Eddie Murphy as the nutty professor, the main dude, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. They tried it with Dumb and Dumber 2 or whatever it was.
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah. Was it Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I get what you're saying. I don't think that you're going to do anything new with this. So like, you lose me as soon as you say remake. If you were like, yeah, we're doing a continuation, I'd be much more in for that. All right, so let's move on a little bit. Variety is reporting the CW is developing a live-action show based on the Powerpuff Girls, but now they're all grown up and they're 20-somethings, and they're very resentful that they didn't have a proper childhood where they could just be little girls, which actually makes sense. It's an interesting take.
You had fucking Mojo Jojo trying to conquer the whole world. You had to take him down.
Mojo Jojo.
Had to.
Yeah, but they didn't ask to be created, just like you and I.
Getting deep into it.
I mean, I wish I... Never mind. So apparently they're going to have to get over those issues because when they are once again reunited to save the world, like, they have to work together and blah, blah, blah.
You think it's going to be like Mojo Jojo's son now? That's...
How long do monkeys live? Bojo Jojo, something like that. Yeah. Who were the? Well, there was literally the guy who was the devil, and he had crab claws.
Okay,
I mean, you have plenty of villains to choose from.
I don't think you have plenty. I can literally remember those two villains.
How much Powerpuff Girls did you really watch?
I used to consume a lot of Powerpuff Girls, but I need to go back, I guess, and rewatch.
I guess, man. Like, you don't even remember anything about outside of the Mojo Jojo. Like, there were way more villains than that.
Yeah, but Mojo Jojo was the guy. You need him in this.
If the Powerpuff Girl who wore green is not cast as Aubrey Plaza, like the angry one, then I give up. Like, Hollywood doesn't
start a petition to cancel Powerpuff
Hollywood
Girls.
doesn't understand what we're even looking for at this point.
We'll try to cancel it then.
Who's like the super bubbly one?
Bubbles.
Well, no, I mean, which actress would play?
Oh, okay.
I don't mean who is it.
No.
Probably like a YouTube star who's like super over the top.
Can
and
you just like take Cameron Diaz and just de-age her just a little bit?
Wow, now you're calling Cameron Diaz too
She
old
looks,
to play.
no, I said a little bit. She looks good, but she is old. She's got to be 50 now, right?
I'm gonna Google that. I hope she's not.
I was
because
looking
that's
at
gonna
how
make me
old
feel
Idris
extremely
Elba
old.
was, and he's 47.
Well, if you think about it, like The Mask came out in '94. She was probably at least 25 then. Oh God,
48 probably.
this is really
Don't
gonna
try
hurt.
to make me feel like shit. You always do this.
She's 48,
Yes. Yes.
so she is not yet 50.
All right. I apologize.
She's aging
even though I
very gracefully.
guessed it right.
And yeah, sure. I don't know what do we think of this? Like the CW doing this is probably going to make it super campy because that's what they do.
I'm not into it.
At what point do you have a crossover with the Flash?
At one point, did they like? How did this happen? Some guy just walked. I'll say either male or female person walked into the writer's room and was like, "Hey, Powerpuff Girls, let's fucking do this."
This is a thing that's happening in Hollywood right now where you cash in on nostalgia. Like people our age are starting to make money.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we have money to spend on going to the theater, merchandise, like action figures, shit like that. If you're into it, that's exactly what this is. I was a little bit too old to get into the Powerpuff Girls. Not,
Were you too old for Dexter's Lab?
I think Dexter's Lab came first. But yes, I watched a shitload of Dexter's Lab.
And Ed and Eddie.
I was never a big Ed and Eddie fan, but if you had to pick,
I'm saying that when you have
I can't.
8
When
beers.
I've had 7 beers. If you had to pick a Nickelodeon cartoon to be remade as live action into TV show, what would it be? I know what you're gonna say. I just want to.
You know what I'm going to say?
You cover your ears real quick. Cover your ears. It's Rocket Power. All right.
Doug.
Oh wow, I guessed wrong. I thought you were gonna say Rocket Power for sure.
No, I was thinking Rocket Power, but I'm like, no,
Okay,
he knows that's coming.
Yeah, so I
What if
Yeah,
I was
no-
just like wild thornberries?
smashing.
That
Uh,
actually wouldn't be a bad line.
I'd watch that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
basically Wild Boys, but yeah, Wild Boys, but Thornberries. Yeah, you get attacked by an alligator every now and then. No big deal.
What are you going for?
Man, I honestly didn't really think about this. Probably Angry Beavers. Like, I want to see people in giant beaver suits. I loved that show. I thought it was hilarious.
Like Cat Dog?
Not as much. What about Courage the Cowardly Dog?
That would be a great one. That would be like a good horror.
Yeah.
You just made it like super. It was a pretty dark kid show.
There was
if you
some
think about
really
it.
creepy shit going on in there. Like beyond the grave type mummies coming to haunt your life. Deep, scary shit.
No, you could definitely do a pretty.
I would watch a live action Courage the Cowardly Dog. Okay.
I'm not for that though. The Powerpuff
Why not?
CW show. I don't like CW shows. I don't know. They're just reaching ever right now.
Okay. Well, apparently Diablo Cody, who won an Oscar, is one of the main people behind the show, along with Heather Rayner, who was in charge of writing for Veronica Mars and Sleepy Hollow. Also, Greg Berlanti is the executive producer. This is, again, a live action show. So, I mean, you've got some real star power, at least behind the production, behind the cameras. So maybe it won't suck. Okay. Mark, what did you think when you heard that that Altered Carbon had been canceled?
I was fine with it. Did you finish season 2? Because I sure didn't.
I did. So
Did it get better?
I'm gonna pull that card where
Did
I'm
it
like,
get better?
but I read the books. I'm a big fan of this universe
Okay.
where
But just because they have the books have a good universe doesn't mean if a show goes from like pretty good to just, in my opinion, even though I didn't finish it, that's why I asked you. I thought it was shit. I don't think they need to continue it.
I would not, if someone came to me and said this TV show sucked, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I get it. If you are a fan of the lore, quote unquote, it was a little bit better, but there was so much that you had to remember. I mean, it was what, 3 years between season 1 and season 2, probably 2. There's so much terminology and shit that you have to remember in this universe. They did nothing to revitalize your memory and just like refresh you on it. There was like a quick 60-second intro, I think, that was like, here's what happened in season 1. That is not enough for you to know what a stack is and call people meths, which is a reference to Methuselah, which is basically just really, really old people who they're rich, they keep living their lives over and over again.
Yeah.
It does not lend itself to that. Like,
or not through new stacks, through new
bodies, same stack.
bodies,
So basically,
okay.
The premise of this is your brain lives in a stack, quote unquote, which is a disc that goes into your spine and your neck. And if your body dies, it's fine. They can take your stack and put it into a new body. If your stack gets destroyed, done. So we'll start killing meths. And I don't know. The Anthony Mackie season, in my opinion, was not as good as season 1 with Joel Kinnaman. I don't think it had anything to do with the actual actors. I just think that the writing was better in season 1.
No, I agree. I thought, the writing just wasn't really going. Not do the first season any justice with kind of reminding you and getting you excited, like kicking it off to where it's like, okay, this shit just happened. Here's what's up next.
If you're doing a Batman movie, you can depend on people to know what happened previously. If you're doing something like this, it's a little more obscure. That is not the case. You do not have the freedom to do something like that where it's just super out there and everybody just knows the lore of your setting. It doesn't work that way. That's the big problem that I had with season 2. It just wasn't as good as season 1.
How many episodes was that? And they're all like an hour long too, right?
That's the other thing. It was a little longer than it needed to be.
I remember we wanted to do season 1. Well, we did season 1 for an episode.
Yeah.
And I think Brick and I started like a few days before, and I'm just like, holy shit, this is 11 episodes or whatever, all an hour.
But you liked the first season, right?
It was good.
Okay.
It was good, definitely.
It's weird to see Netflix actually cancel things like this. It is a larger budget TV show.
Yeah.
So it does kind of make sense. Obviously they have analytics and everything that we are not privy to. So I don't know. It sucks because I love the source material. I was a big fan of the books, but I don't know. As the world turns, shit gets canceled.
Right. We got new shit.
How do we broach Chadwick Boseman? We talked about this a little bit on our comics panel. Obviously, it's the biggest news of the week.
Yeah,
There's nothing that we can say that hasn't already been said about a great man who
super rough, not knowing, and I respect the fact that he kept it he kept it to himself. I get that. And just knowing how long, I mean, what has been written in the news is he was battling this for 4 years. Knowing all the movies he was doing within that period, it's kind of ridiculous. So
it just feels insane that we just watched The Five Bloods.
So much respect, and I mean, prayers to him and his family, but especially from like the comic book community aspect and people that love comics and movies. And yeah, you had him as Black Panther, but I was enjoying like all his what is it,
12 Bridges.
12 Bridges. That movie, I had a great time, and I think I was the only one. We didn't do our episode that week. I saw that in theaters. I'm like, wow, this was actually kind of surprised me. So, I mean, he's going to be greatly missed, obviously. Had a big impact on.
I think that he, as Black Panther, was basically the representation that a lot of people were looking for. So yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's terrible. There have been so many excellent things written about him, like just what a good person he was and how much he cared about other people. And everybody on Twitter is like, can't wait for 2020 to end and shit like that. When in reality, until we all stop being assholes to each other, 2021 is not going to make any difference. Just start being nice to each other. Love everybody. Why not? If I can love this piece of shit, I feel as though you can love your neighbor.
Do a podcast with him for 100 and what episode is this?
This is episode 210. So you've been on about 180 of them, probably.
About 180 of them. That's
okay.
Right.
I'm going to play a drop now. All right, so if you are familiar with the show, you know that is our movie drop. Guy at the Movies is in the chat, and he says it was 21 bridges. That's a lot of bridges.
I was right. I think I said 21.
That's 9 more bridges than what I expected. Okay. We saw New Mutants this week, and as we discussed, the experience was a little bit different. It was the first time going back to a movie theater in about 6 months. Let's just get all the bullshit out of the way. Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, New Mutants has a 31% from critics, 53% from fans.
Yeah.
I think that what we've said in the past is that a 20% gap between those two makes it a popcorn flick. I don't know that I'm comfortable calling this a popcorn flick.
I wouldn't. No.
This movie...
Maybe the last 10 minutes of it. The ending scene was fine, but we'll get into it.
This movie's been in production hell for almost 4 years. The first trailer we got for this was 3 years ago. 3 years. Can you imagine getting a trailer for a movie 3 years before it comes out and people still caring about it? That's insane.
Do people care about this though now?
I think that diehard X-Men fans care about this a lot.
Even knowing how Dark Phoenix went and seeing that movie and it being one of Fox's last movies, knowing going into this is Fox's last movie, were your expectations that high?
So we talked about how there were going to be reshoots and everything, and there eventually were not. I'm just really torn on why Disney sat on this for 3 years. Obviously, the merger happened more recently than that.
Yeah.
They could have released this basically at any time, and they just chose not to. They could have put it out on Disney Plus, chose not to. I don't understand the logic there at all. This is a perfect Disney Plus movie.
You think it was Boone's doing?
So Josh Boone is the director. He did The Fault in Our Stars, which people love. Very different direction, by the way. It's a movie about a kid who has cancer.
I can see, like, looking back at New Mutants, how he kind of, what he did with The Fault in Our Stars, how he kind of incorporated it into this movie. It was very kind of lovey and just like, you know, teenager-esque. Like, this is a very, I feel like this could have been that superhero movie for teens, but it sucked. So, in my opinion, and it's not going to be.
You know what? That's a good question. Like, who is the target audience for this?
I think it's teenagers.
Is it? Because, I mean, I guess, but assume that a 15-year-old has never read the Chris Claremont New Mutants type comic books.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are you trying to reel in with this? Because it's not the comic book fans, because they went so far off script with this.
Yeah.
Like, you have the names there. You've got Magic and Danny Moonstar and Sam Guthrie and all these people, but you don't have the actual source material being used in the finished product.
You want to give the synopsis, or you want to start diving into the actual?
Let's do the synopsis.
What happened with the comics?
I get, so if you've never seen this show before, I get very worked up over comic book movies, especially for things that I'm a big fan of, and I'm a big New Mutants comic book fan. Okay. I felt that this was more of an X Factor type story than a New Mutants. X Factor is more like investigative.
Yeah.
Investigative. How do you say that word? Investigative type storyline. So the characters are definitely New Mutants, but I feel like the storyline was more X Factor.
Okay.
But what you've got here is our main character is Danny Moonstar. She basically wakes up one day and something really messed up is happening in her village. She lives on a Native American reservation. Bad stuff happens. Her dad dies. She wakes up in this what looks like a quote unquote mental asylum, and she wakes up to Dr. Cecilia Reyes, who is an X-Men comic book character, but basically telling her, like, hey, you're a mutant. You hit your mutant stride. Like, your X gene has activated, and you're here with a few other people. And what you come to find out throughout is all of these characters have been stuck here for an indeterminate amount of time, and they're promised that they're going to get their exit, but they never really seem to. So what you get is Sam Guthrie, who plays Cannonball, played by Charlie Heaton. I'm gonna have to look up a few of these off the top of my head. Anya Taylor-Joy is Ilyana Rasputin, who plays Magic. I have a lot to say on that later. Maisie Williams is Rain Sinclair, who is Wolfsbane and is basically a werewolf. You have Alice Braga, who plays Cecilia Reyes, who I mentioned. Blue Hunt is Danny Moonstar. Henry Zaga is Roberto da Costa, and none of the rest of this matters.
Sunspot.
He is Sunspot, but he doesn't really seem like Sunspot in this movie. I think that my biggest issue with this entire movie is that they took these people and they made them so far off base in terms of their personalities. Magic was overtly racist towards Danny Moonstar, like kept making these Native American jokes. It's really hard to look back and say they shot this in 2017. Like, I know it's only been 3 years. Were people less sensitive to it back then? He said some pretty fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just that. It was like, point on the doll where daddy touched you. Like, that's pretty messed up.
It wasn't like that in the comics. Her character, Magic, was not like that.
That is not Magic at all.
Okay.
So, Magic is one of my favorite X-Men characters of all time. And I feel like they did her a huge disservice. Not only the way that they wrote her, but I don't want to shit on Anya Taylor-Joy, but I don't think she did a good job in this movie.
I think a lot of people, from what I've heard, a lot of people think she was one of the better parts of the movie. And I could see that being like
that is very damning.
The antagonist sort of, member of this team.
She was definitely the one who acted as though she was tougher than everybody, and like she was the bully.
So one of my problems was you mentioned it is a investigative story, detective kind of thing where they're trying to figure out what's going on. It was pretty obvious to me what was going on, like who was the main person behind all this, or who was the main antagonist, which I was kind of upset about. And once you figure that out, the whole rest of the movie is just like, okay, well, what are we doing here?
Yeah, they make it very, very apparent early on, and not even, I don't know. So when I see something that says the Essex Corporation on it, I know exactly what they're referring to. And if you're not familiar with the comics, maybe it's different for you. I think we're going to try not to spoil this too much, but you saw that and you were like, oh, I know what's happening now, right? So that kind of takes away a lot of the mystery in the story.
Yeah.
So what was left?
Not much. Another one of my big problems was I just thought the first act was pretty slow, and I thought it was some of the worst acting of this whole movie. There were parts where, okay, they're all doing their accents, and I'm pretty sure the majority of them do not have accents like that at all. So yeah, okay. Maisie Williams, was she from
whose accent was the best though?
Was the best?
Yeah.
So
there is a correct answer.
Anya Taylor-Joy's honestly didn't bother me as much as Maisie Williams did. It didn't bother me as much as Heaton's did.
Charlie Heaton's was the best.
Thought it was the best? Okay.
For a guy like from probably Louisiana, I think that he was by far and away the best.
Is he from Louisiana?
Specifically, no. Yeah. So I think Sam Guthrie is.
Okay.
He's definitely from the South. He's from wait a minute. Doesn't matter. But his accent was the best out of all of them, which is surprising considering that Maisie Williams is British and Scotland's not that far away. Like, I can do a Southern accent.
Oh, it was Scottish. It wasn't Irish.
No, maybe it was. You know what? It's so hard to tell that you can't really pick it apart.
And that was my issue. Yeah. And I didn't think the main character we had here,
Danny Moonstar.
Mirage, right?
Yep. She's Psyche, Mirage. It depends on how far you are in the story.
I wasn't all for her. I thought she was fine. But there was.
I think that she's a very good actress. I mean, this was shot like 4 years ago, so maybe she's gotten better, but I don't think that she did a great job in this movie, and maybe it's the direction from Josh Boone, or I didn't really care for her character.
So I don't want to completely shit on this movie because I didn't think it was the worst thing that's ever come out of Fox, or I didn't think it was the worst X-Men movie either. I thought towards the end, I actually enjoyed like the end battle we kind of get. That's still predictable to some aspect. And it does get better. And knowing that the budget was lower, it was, I mean, they're still probably not going to make their money back on this movie, unfortunately.
So the budget for this was $67 million, which sounds low when you consider everybody was talking about reshoots and everything like that. Yeah, this is a cheap X-Men movie.
It was better than Dark Phoenix, in my opinion.
I read an article, whoever the movie reviewer is for Forbes said that this was the worst X-Men movie ever. And I was like, this person clearly has not seen every X-Men movie that's been released because it's not close. This is very middle of the road, I think. The other two Dark Phoenix movies were worse. Apocalypse was worse. This is very middle of the road. And I don't know. I
also still do think this was for a younger audience. Like it was trying to be, people are going to hate this, but it was trying to be like a more Twilight-y kind of like X-Men movie, you know, where it cared about like these love interests that these younger kids are establishing with each other and things like that. It was trying to have that sense to it, you know, where it was trying to relate more to that younger audience. So I get that. But yeah, overall, I didn't think it was the worst thing that Fox or any the worst movie that's come out of the X-Men franchise. But at the same time, yeah, it's
just fine. It's very fine.
It was okay.
My biggest problem with the movie overall was the way the liberties that they took with the actual characters. I think they made Magic into a piece of shit bully. Roberto da Costa probably should have been the piece of shit bully because that's what he is in the comics. Sam Guthrie was fine. Rain Sinclair is so vehemently Catholic. And we talk about this a lot, where you should take liberties with your story. Because otherwise, if you're just directly translating something from the comic books, then everybody knows that story.
Yeah.
So it was interesting in that aspect that she had a little bit of a different relationship with Danny Moonstar. But the way that they treated these characters just made it seem like the writer had never read a New Mutants book.
Yeah. And I want to bring up a little drama. So Bob McLeod is the co-creator of New Mutants. And after he saw this movie, he went out on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, made a post saying that all these characters were completely Hollywood whitewashed, that they completely, like the designs and how these characters looked and acted were completely different, and he was not for it at all. But I will mention my take on that. But at the end, he also said that they misspelled his name in the credits, which is actually pretty shitty.
That is absolutely
pretty
brutal.
shitty. They spelled it Mac, like Mac, M-A-C instead of Mick, M-C. So that is shitty. But I went back and I was like, okay, I'm curious about how you really felt. He could have been under NDA or whatever it was. But 2 years ago, I pulled up a Sci-Fi Wire interview or something like that on YouTube. And he basically said that he was happy with the way things were going. And he already saw how the characters looked. You know, he knew they were taking a different direction towards like the horror aspect. You know, everyone's like, oh, there's going to be a horror X-Men movie. It's going to be a little bit darker, all for it. And he initially didn't think that was the way they should have won. He actually kind of wanted them to do an Origins and go deeper into how they all got their powers and where they came from within like their family and everything.
I mean, he can change his mind though, right? Like if he thought it was good 3 years ago and then shit changes.
I'm just saying more towards the Hollywood whitewashing aspect, how you saw how these characters looked 2 years ago. Like you saw the trailer. He mentioned how Sunspot should have been darker, things like that. And I'm at the same time, I'm just like, okay, maybe he really did feel that way. But there is some drama out there with Bob McLeod, obviously, and the way they did this movie, the way Boone did this.
Do you think that your opinion of this movie would have changed had it not been in development hell for 3 years?
No, because I wasn't waiting for this movie. I don't know that much about New Mutants. I wasn't as excited for it as you were when it came out. So when they announced like, okay, now this movie's coming out 3 years later or whatever, I was like, fine, whatever, we're gonna go watch it. You were anticipating it a little bit more than I was. So overall, I care that much.
I think that Disney did a huge disservice by putting it on the shelf for this long.
Yeah.
Like, you could have released it at any time in the last 3 years, and it just didn't help at all. Like, it's not, even if you have a masterpiece, that is not going to help the hype. People are going to keep talking about it, and it's going to be detrimental to the end product.
Yeah, you're hurting yourself when you take that long, because then people think it's going to be so much better, far and beyond better than what it was, and that wasn't the case, obviously.
So not only that, but there were other things in the movie that the director wanted to loop into the other Marvel universe, the Marvel cinematic universe, which is, I think, a big part of the allure of these movies altogether. So when you remove that option, I think that's going to automatically make this movie less influential. It's going to make people care about it less.
Yeah.
I mentioned the Essex Corporation stuff, and if you're an X-Men fan, you know what that means. They had really big plans for that. And apparently that character was going to be played by John Hamm, which I think would have been amazing. John Hamm would have knocked it out as that character.
I'm glad they didn't bring him in, though, because I would have been extremely upset knowing that this wasn't going to happen now that.
So apparently they did shoot an actual post-credit scene for this where Roberto da Costa's dad shows up. And I don't want to get into what that could have meant, but yeah, there was so much potential for this.
Yeah.
And when you bring in new mutants, the entire premise is, excuse me, that once you hit like puberty in the mutant genre or world,
yeah,
you slowly start to discover your powers. And that is a very interesting thing, because each one of these characters had a really bad experience with the first time that they used their powers, and that's something you could have built on.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like they
did
that.
That's what Bob McLeod wanted. That's what he was basically saying, is that's the story I would have done instead of this whole dark inside Essex Corporation and thing like that. But no, I'm absolutely with you. I think we got to wrap this up soon, so I say we rate it.
Okay, we got a few minutes left, but yeah, I'll let you rate it. Go ahead.
I'm gonna say save it.
I think I'm gonna have to agree, just because.
I mean, it's either skip it or save it. I'm gonna say save it. It wasn't the worst thing I've seen come out of the X-Men franchise.
It's not close. It's not even the worst movie we've seen in the last month. Like, we've seen much worse movies, and I think that there was a lot of hype built up for this, not only because it was just like blue balls getting into the theater, but actually opening movie theaters. And this is the first weekend. Well, second weekend. We didn't see Russell Crowe's Unhinged for obvious reasons, but like Christine in the chat says, I feel like a lot of people forget this movie even existed. And for now for it to come out and just be like, hey, we're in theaters. It's kind of
me now.
It's just got a friend.
I'm out of quarantine. See the movie that
there's Remy, who's named after Remy LeBeau, the X-Men character Gambit. So that's how much of an X-Men fan I am. So I think we'll wrap this up. Mark, do you want to do recommendations for the week?
Sure, real quick. HBO released Lovecraft Country. It's an awesome show. They're only through 2 episodes. I think another episode.
3 comes tonight.
3 comes tonight.
Very excited for.
YouTube actually dropped the first episode, and the full thing was available. So I think it's still there. If you guys want to go watch the first episode, if you don't have HBO Now or whatever, or HBO Max or whatever it is, it should be on YouTube still. And that's actually, in my opinion, a really smart move to make.
It absolutely is.
The show's
gonna draws people in, you get them hooked, and then you're like, okay, you have to
Hey,
subscribe to see the rest.
Yeah. Lovecraft Country, though. Go check it out.
Absolutely great. I've been doing some rewatching, mostly because The Boys comes out this Friday. I've heard conflicting stories about how they're going to release it, whether it's the first 4 and then they do it every Friday after to release the next 4, or if they're going to drop them all on this Friday. But either way, I've been rewatching season 1. It's absolutely fucking brilliant. I didn't know, like, we talked last week when we did Umbrella Academy about whether, like, what's the best thing you've seen in the last few years as far as a superhero TV show goes.
Watchmen Boy season 1.
And I was like, well, I don't want recency bias to completely change my opinion on this. after rewatching the first half of The Boys season 1, it absolutely deserves to be at the top of that list.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I'm feeling with that. Not only that, but I made my wife watch Knives Out, which is now on Amazon Prime. So if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can watch that for free. In my opinion, it was the best movie of 2019. I absolutely loved it. There's twists and turns. The acting is brilliant. It was written by Ryan Johnson, who does an excellent job. I can't say enough about it. I think it's one of my favorite movies to come out in the last 5 years, probably. Go check that out for sure. I also have been playing a game that I just downloaded last night called Among Us. It's $5 on Steam, so if you have a computer, you can play it. It's basically just a dumb game. You ever played the Jackbox game where somebody's an alien and you're on a spaceship and you have to figure out who that person is? Yep. It's kind of like that. Like you have to collaborate with other people in this game to try and figure out who the murderer is.
Okay.
And you eject them out of the airlock.
Is it a whodunit where everyone could be the murderer?
It is. That's exactly what it is. But if you have like 10 people, 2 of them are aliens or murderers or whatever. You have to kind of figure it out. So it all depends on where you are. It's kind of a side-scrolling type game. It's very low budget, as a $5. Obviously, that kind of makes sense. But I can't recommend it enough. It's a very good time, and play it with some friends. I think it's excellent. So with that, I think we're running out of time here. We got 2 minutes left. So I'm gonna say thank you for tuning in, and thank you for joining us at the Guy at the Movies Film Festival. Joe, thank you very much for having us. I just pull him in. He's going to be super pissed. Hey, Joe, you're muted right now, but thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
As always, you can find us on all social media platforms at the Chumpcast. You can call or text us at 847-920-6107. We hope you had a good time hanging out with us. Check out our earlier panel in which we talked about comic book movies. And stay tuned for more great content at the Guy at the Movies Film Festival.
All right, jumps out, mother.